The central thesis of my 2018 book, The Inevitable Jack the Ripper, is that the artist Walter Sickert was the Ripper. Reviewing and revising my work some years on, I think the subtlety of my conclusion may have been overlooked by some readers, and I would probably have made it clearer if I were writing the book today. My statement that Sickert was Jack does not necessarily mean that he was the killer of all, or indeed any of the so-called canonical 5 victims in 1888, or any of the other litany of killings listed at the time under the title of The Whitechapel Murders. I won't explain all of the book's findings and research here, less to say that I have not changed my mind and do not recant any conclusions. Sickert is, I believe, a very strong candidate. But the point I was trying and possibly failing to make was that whether Sickert was the killer or not, he, alongside the Victorian gutter press or new journalism, depending on your viewpoint, had such an important role in building and in particular maintaining the legend of Jack the Ripper that one must point to him as a chief propagator of the mythology. Rather than being mere tragic footnotes in history, murders of down-at-heel women in foggy alleyways in London's lawless East End, the killings have taken on a life of their own. This is thanks, if that's the correct word, to the contemporary continuation of the story by Walter Sickert. Whether this was a brash killer hiding his horrific deeds in plain sight, or as a macabre and ghoulish attempt at artistic controversy and publicity, we will likely never know for sure. So, with this background established, I can move into the primary subject of this video, the Walter Sickert exhibition which took place recently at London's Tate Britain Gallery. The extensive collection featured the artist's works alongside those of his mentors and inspirations, particularly Whistler and Degas. The exhibition housed pieces from his apprenticeship years, including stylised shop fronts and other urban scenes in Dieppe and London, before moving into his theatrical and vivid obsession with music hall. In these, Sickert displayed his propensity for ruffling feathers by depicting these scenes of working-class entertainments deemed by critics to be inappropriate subjects for fine art. The artist was also involved in an unusual form of portraiture, with female subjects used largely to define generic types of people rather than individuals in their own right. Personally, I'm not sure whether this displays a lack of humanity in his segmentation of social strata or an understanding of how people actually lived their lives. Sickert was certainly willing to get his hands dirty and not just with stray paint. Another seeming obsession of Sickert's was the nude, which certainly took a dark turn. In 1910, Sickert published an article in The New Age entitled The Naked and the Nude. The gist of the piece was that Sickert viewed academic nudes as so artificial in setting and form that the resultant art bore little resemblance of the true naked human figure. Sickert painted urban working-class women in contemporary settings, presenting them as naked rather than as an idealised nude. He also experimented with the aesthetics engendered by painting nudes in interior and occasionally claustrophobic interior settings. These include examples like patterns in flesh created by light streaming from a window. Sickert first exhibited his nudes in Paris in 1905, where they were well received. 6 years later, when he exhibited them in Britain, they had the opposite effect among critics. They objected to the subject matter, and the press associated the works with destitution and prostitution. This was likely due to the realistic representation of naked women in dimly lit rooms on modest iron bedsteads with crumpled sheets. Modern eyes view the work differently, but also, in some quarters, unfavourably. In recent years, it has been suggested the images amount to objectification of women and display concerning power dynamics between the model and the artist. If Sickert's nudes were troubling, his infamous Camden Town murder series would eventually take that up a notch. Some of the poses Sickert told his models to take made them appear to be in distress or even dead, and it has been pointed out that these are reminiscent of the positions in which the canonical 5 Jack the Ripper victims were discovered. In 1907, Sickert painted an impressionist piece called Jack the Ripper's Bedroom, which unfortunately was not displayed at the Tate. However, his Camden Town murder series was all present and correct. From painting single nudes, Sickert soon began to explore different ways of posing 2 figures in an interior. Works set in Venice and London depict semi-naked and clothed women in conversation seated on a bed. Sickert then developed a series of disturbing paintings depicted a clothed man and naked woman. He posed his models in the same dingy rooms in Camden Town where he had painted his nudes, using many of the same props such as the iron bedstead. These paintings have become known as the Camden Town Murder Series. With his eye on the sensational, the provocative title referenced a horrific real-life murder. The Camden Town murder was the name given to the killing of Emily Dimmock in Camden in 1907. Like the Jack the Ripper and associated Whitechapel murders of 1888 and around then, the murder attracted huge press attention. Media hacks were keen to pore over all the details of crimes as so-called new journalism had sprung up, bringing news to the newly literate masses. Sickert took advantage of the interest and controversy by giving some of his paintings titles that alluded to the murder. He also later reworked them and gave them alternative titles. But was this just a clever, if somewhat tasteless, trick of the artist to play with the viewer's perception? The changing titles allowed those who regarded Sickert's work to imagine different narratives and relationships between the figures. Sickert was interested in the emotional connection between the figures in their different configurations, rather than any kind of illustration of Dimmock's murder. The series has long intrigued audiences because of the ambiguity between the title and the subject matter. In a technical sense, the series allowed Sickert to further explore narrative painting, but the nature of the works has raised ire among audiences for the implied relationships and the potential for violence they see within the scenes. So, was Walter Sickert Jack the Ripper? Maybe, like Sickert's Camden Town murder series, it's all a matter of perception. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe. And you can also support the channel on Subscribe Star via the link in the description. Thanks for watching.